Hi, everyone. My name is Diane Haithman. I'm Senior Entertainment Business Reporter here at TheWrap. And today I am very pleased to be leading the TheGrill panel, Monetizing Innovation, Science and Creativity in Marketing, presented by Known. And before we jump into the conversation, let's introduce you to our panelists. First, we have Elias Plichner, who serves as Executive Vice President of Worldwide Digital Marketing and Data Analytics for Sony Pictures Worldwide Marketing and Distribution. There's a long title, which is a unit of Sony Pictures Entertainment. In his role, Elias leads a global team responsible for business intelligence, media planning and buying, digital marketing, marketing research and strategy, audience and campaign data analytics, and social media, which is actually a very interesting topic. And we'll get more to that. Kern Shearson is the chairman and CEO of Known, a modern marketing company that delivers world-class science, strategy, and creative in a single integrated offering that helps clients including Google, HBO, Netflix, TikTok, and more achieve their goals. Known was formed after Shearson Associates, founded by Kern, acquired Blackbird Global and Stun Creative in 2019. From 2015 to 2019, Kern also served as Viacom's Chief Data Officer and Corporate Executive Vice President. And finally, meet Stephen Bruno. I'm so disappointed that I didn't get to say finally meet Bruno, Stephen Bruno, because as a representative of MGM Studios, he was going to wear his James Bond tuxedo today, but I understand it has to stay unwrinkled for a big premiere coming up. Stephen serves as Chief Marketing Officer of MGM, and the much anticipated new Bond film, No Time to Die, is opening in theaters in October. Am I right? Stephen oversees global marketing and brand strategy for the company's film and television properties around the world. His recent projects include Respect, starring Jennifer Hudson, as well as the upcoming Addams Family 2, which we're all looking forward to, the 25th film in the James Bond series, No Time to Die, as we mentioned, starring Daniel Craig, and House of Gucci from director Ridley Scott. And that's everybody. And we've got some interesting stuff to talk about here today. I want to just kind of do a bit of a round robin so I can hear a little bit from each of you. And I wanted to start with Elias here. Elias, you had mentioned that data analytics are getting increasingly sophisticated, and when we had a chance to talk a little bit earlier, and that demographics don't really mean what they used to. You know, that the science continues to get more sophisticated, and for that reason, it's something that can be used in new ways and probably more efficient ways. I think what scares us all when we see big words like science plus creativity and analytics and all of that stuff is, how do art and science live in happy harmony? We're dealing with creative people. We're dealing with Hollywood. How does this all work out?
Yeah. So first, Dan, thanks, for having me today. I want to say thanks to TheWrap for hosting the panel. Thanks to you for moderating, and to say I'm honored to be part of this amazing group with Stephen and Kern. So thank you for including me.
Oh, thank you.
I also wanted to say, I'm lucky I get to work with an amazing team at Sony Pictures, and they're really the reason why everything we're going to talk about today happens. So they're really key to the innovation that we create in this space. So I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that. When it comes to art versus science, this is a hot topic for us. I always remind everybody that we are a creatively focused organization. The art part of the equation, the art part of the title for the panel today, is first and foremost the most important part of what we do. And at the heart of any studio is really a creatively content-driven focus. Mm-hmm. So that's important for everyone to understand, especially if you're getting into the space. So keep that in mind. But how we position our analytics-driven marketing approach, the scientific portion of that equation, is really not along the lines of a machine essentially making all of the decisions for us. That's not true. That's not what we want to position it as. It's just not that way. We're not going to be replaced tomorrow with algorithms. So let me start by saying that. Instead, the idea is, how do we make the decisions that we make each and every day as robust as possible? And how do the data-driven tools give us a ton of confidence in those decisions? It's still our decision to make. It's still people that make those decisions. But how do we have a lot of faith in those choices? And who wouldn't want that? So, I know we're going to start a lot more. We're going to talk a lot more about that today. But realize that when we start any campaign meeting, any time that we're together as a marketing organization, we start with what do we know now, and then we start making decisions together on what to do next.
I see. Okay. Kern, I think that we talked a little bit about some of those same issues with you. Tell us a little bit about where we are in terms of data analytics now. What is perhaps something that maybe I don't know, or what our general viewers don't know about what's out there and what's being done?
Thanks, Diane, and thanks for hosting us on this panel. I echo everything that Elias said. It's great to be here and great to see you. I can't imagine. I would never presume what you don't know. I'll tell you what I think is exciting right now, and we talked about this a little bit earlier in the week. The intersection of art and science that Elias talked about, I think, is getting more and more seamless. And I think the sophistication of analytics is approaching a point where the best creatives in the world can really be elevated by the science and the analytics and the insights that come out of it. And I do think we're approaching a point where instead of looking at this as just data, we're going to start understanding that the sophistication and the nuance provided by modern data science and analytics really adds to the creative process. And in the same way that, maybe 20 years ago, a great artist, a great visual artist might say, I've got to be working with oil paint and a canvas, or it's got to be charcoal and a pencil. You're now finding a generation of visual artists that feel really comfortable and confident using the kinds of technologies that they've grown up with, using the iPad, using an Apple Pencil, using some new tools to create, and feeling like those tools aren't inhibiting their creativity, but elevating them. And I do think that that's a function of advances in sophistication in the science that makes it feel more human, that makes it feel more like an augmentation than a replacement or an opposition. I think that the speed and the sophistication of presentation of data now, and just the state of the art of data science, and the folks who are working to support and augment what our creative teams do, has evolved to a place where it's feeling increasingly seamless and increasingly powerful.
I see. Well, Stephen, I guess I'd like your comment on these same topics. And as we talked about before, you're talking about the kind of research data analytics that goes with theatrical release is mostly your focus, and how that can be used for, I guess, in many ways, rather than sort of analyzing who watched, like you would do with a television show or a streaming product, but who will go, when will they, what sort of behavior are we looking at? It's a little bit different, I suppose, again, than that kind of content question.
Sure. I think it's different and sort of the same. And just echoing my panelists, my fellow panelists, and thank you to TheWrap for having us. To you, Diane, of course. As Elias mentioned, the fun thing about having a big title is that there's a lot of people that do all the work. So I just want to make a nod to our partners / family at United Artists Releasing who launch these movies in the U.S. and our partners at Universal International who help us market and distribute the films all around the world. So my thought on this question is more along the lines of, and this comes a bit from my experience prior at Netflix. I think that the data and the increase focus on analyzing that data has done a positive service to dispelling the paradigms around there are 4 quadrants of people, and this is how those 4 quadrants act. If you are, male over 25, you only like X. If you are female under 25, you only ever go to Y. And I think that what data has shown is that not only is that, very much incorrect, it's very, very wrong. And people show by their actions that they're interested in a whole huge wide spectrum of things. So, my positive take on data and how much, sort of more data we have to analyze, obviously in a blind way, is that we're finding more audiences than we've ever thought possible. And I think that it's opened our eyes as marketers to not rely on our sort of biased bubble and think beyond to what is truly out there in terms of interested parties.
Right. Well, I've got to think for all of you, but I'll start with you, Stephen, and go kind of backwards this time. Is the pandemic certainly threw a monkey wrench into having to consider people's behavior in a pandemic versus any other time. Perhaps we're watching more. Perhaps we're more reluctant to go to a film. Maybe we're extra anxious and excited to go see Bond or something that finally gets us out the front door. Is that something that can be plugged into that sort of analytic pattern, or is that just a little bit more seat of the pants? I know how I feel, using that info.
I mean, look, I think unfortunately there's just so many unknowns about this moment right now that if there were any rules in the last 5 years, they've been thrown out because there's just not a consistent moment. I think what we all feel on the theatrical side is that the experience of going to see a movie on a big screen, that communal experience, sitting together with not necessarily like-minded individuals, but everyone joining in on a moment and a cultural moment. There's nothing like it. Plus the sense of sort of engaging in the behavior is a sort of a bigger choice than something that may be passive viewing. And so when you make that choice, you're sort of extra excited for the payoff, and then potentially, extra disappointed. I mean, that's sort of a part of the two scales there. I think we're all optimistic of the future that people are going to come back in droves, and we our partners on well, not our partners, but our colleagues in the industry over at Disney have had a lot of success recently with Shang-Chi, which did a record-breaking, not non-pandemic, just record-breaking Labor Day weekend opening, and so signs like that are good.
Right. So it sounds like it is in some ways what we might have thought last summer is I'm more excited about seeing a big action film or a Bond film or any of those kind of films on the big screen, perhaps, than I might be to see the award-winning Academy Award conversation between two guys that lasts for 2 hours. In other words,
I don't know. I think we're all. I think they all have a place in the theater. We'll see.
Yeah.
We're excited.
Yeah. And again, it's how much do we like going to a theater? I've got to say, sometimes I make a decision based on there's an art film theater that's pretty close to my house. What do they have? I'm going to go because I want that whole experience of going there.
Sure.
So I'm going to choose based on that. One thing that I think this is probably where you get all the Writers Guild members busily texting each other while they watch this is, but all of you brought up, and Elias brought it up first, I think, that this data can be used in the process of creating the content. It's not just about, okay, are we going to market this afterward, but should we, can we, will we use this kind of data in terms of creating that story? Or is it again, just the artist needs complete freedom to do what they want to do, and then you guys figure out afterward how to market it? And anybody can jump in, maybe Elias, since we, heard that from you first, I think.
Yeah, I mean, so I'll say, if you have a really good approach to, your data strategy, you've thought of not just marketing applications, but you've thought of applications all through the content development cycle. Mm-hmm. And I'll be honest, it's very early days on how we use the tools that we've built on the development side, but it's definitely a priority. So let me start by saying that. I also wanted to echo one of Stephen's points about demographics, separate topic, but I 1,000% agree with the whole idea about, essentially misleading basic demographics. Mm-hmm. And I think it's well worth stepping on because it's really smart, because think about it. If you lined up 100 insert demo here, right? Men 18 to 34-year-olds, there is no reason we should assume that all 100 of them are interested in the same movie for the same reason. No way. And even though there's 16 years or whatever it is in between that group, they have completely different interests. They come from different backgrounds. They essentially are different life stages. So targeting audiences based on basic demographics, it's incredibly misleading. So for us, it's been an opportunity, but frankly also an obligation to think about using signals in the marketing process, digital signals in the marketing process. So I think about it. If you bought a ticket to the last superhero film, we mentioned Shang-Chi, or a romantic drama or a horror film, you're a hand raiser because you've interacted in one of our campaigns. And why wouldn't we do everything humanly possible to try to get you to commit to our next film, right? Venom's coming out in a couple of weeks, or Spider-Man will be here, right before Christmas. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to data-driven targets today, I think that's all important. You mentioned the pandemic, and we're certainly also focused on new metrics, including willingness to return to movie theaters. Mm-hmm. And I don't think you can discount that metric as well. We're looking for which signals are actually indicators of willingness to return to movie theaters, but that's clearly very topical today, more so than ever, okay? Yeah. So I just want to make sure I mentioned that and stepped on Stephen's comments because I think it's very timely, so.
Sure. So in some ways we can look at it as we had discussed earlier, that perhaps that it's a way of eliminating bias, unconscious bias that we assume men like cars, or maybe people of a certain demographic group are going to want to see themselves on screen when it's just like, hey, Shang-Chi was just big and exciting and everybody loves it. So there's no demographic we can look at that's
definitely
it's going to go. Yeah.
Our audience strategy is really around, a simple point I like to make all the time, which is just fish where the fish are, right? It's essentially true, right? So it's important today. Every dollar is under the microscope. Everything we spend is under the microscope because of so much uncertainty. And we have to prove that every impression is going to make a difference. And that's what I tell people. Just fish where the fish are. Let's train people how to fish.
Yeah. So for a writer, though, would you, this is probably the kind of dramatic, over-the-top example that people are afraid of, that people would feel is taking something away from that creative process is, okay, we have found out people really don't like lizards, and you've just made a whole movie about lizards. Do you change, or do you just say, we need to find those people? We need to find the lizard fans. We need to find our lizard tribe out there.
Is there a lizard tribe that you're not talking about?
I don't know, but one would think.
I'm sure there is.
It seems like there's a tribe for everything. That's the thing that I think social media has told me is, you Google anything and you'll find an answer. So
I think that the sort of the trope of like, we did this, we can't do it again, or this showed that doesn't work has been disproven time and time again. So we're all on the marketing side. So, we don't really 100% speak for the top of the funnel decisions around the creative and data and creative. But I think, certainly I can speak for MGM Studios in that, we're story led, we're creator led. Mm-hmm. And I think the world is hungry for unique stories. They're hungry for familiar stories. I think that you have to let the art lead in that case. Mm-hmm. And then, as marketing executives, we get into sort of how to present it later.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with that. I think that's right. And, frankly, if we take a step back from this, I think we would all recognize that there are things that people are uniquely great at when it comes to creating art and building an emotional storyline that leads to an impact that matters to people. Computers don't do that well. We've all seen computer generated art. It's not that compelling. There are things that computers are really good at. And if you go back to what Elias and Stephen are talking about, that is the recognition of patterns that might otherwise go unseen in vast arrays of behavioral data and attitudinal data. And the the finding of connections between patterns on different dimensions. So looking at content and stories and looking at audience in a very granular way, in sophisticated and nuanced way, in understanding, as Elias said, where the fish are. Those things data is really helpful for. It's not going to write the next story. It is going to help you identify exactly who might be most interested in that story.
Yeah.
And I mean, my ex-colleagues, you know, at Netflix had a great night at the Emmys last night. Congratulations to them.
Yeah.
But I think there's a great example there in The Queen's Gambit, right? I mean, what data would say that show was going to be the huge global phenomenon that it was?
Right.
And I would say probably none. And yet there it is, and it did great, and it was a great show.
Yeah. Incredibly compelling, great story. That's what's, you know, that's what it takes.
And I guess the giant word of mouth we have now being social media is something you really don't control. It just does its thing. And again, you didn't have any control over word of mouth before, but this is such a giant thing that, again, can tell somebody who might not even know what Queen's Gambit means when they hear that title. All of a sudden they've heard it's just this great show, or this wonderful, you know, if you love costume, you'll love this depiction of the 60s that, you know, there's a lot of different elements in there to like. And again, they're just going to get out there faster, as I say, to all those tribes, except maybe the lizard tribe didn't watch this. I don't know, but we're still waiting for their data. I think, and maybe Kern, you're the one to answer this. What, you know, we all have seen on television focus groups sitting around, whether it's, you know, for humor purposes or whatever. How do you collect the data now? What happens? Do you collect it from people's digital behavior? Do you collect it still with the little pencil and the, you know, the questionnaire after they leave a test screening of a film? How is it done?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I think the answer is all of the above, really, but there has been an enormous evolution of our ability to understand what's happening at the endpoint, at the atomic intersection of a single audience member or a single screen, a piece of content, and a human being. We have a lot more that we can do today to passively understand what kind of experience a person is having with that content, what kind of thing they want to watch next, what kinds of ads they might actually be interested in that can support the monetization of that content and help us go make more great shows. So as much as possible, I think we're understanding the what of what people are doing in those individual atomic interactions, not leaning on panels. I think we've seen what's been happening with Nielsen and the collective understanding that that's not the kind of data set we need for the future of this medium. But we're getting a lot of feedback from those moments of intersection, and we're still using traditional technologies that have been around for 75 years to understand the why and to get underneath the behaviors a little bit and get that real primary research and have conversations with audiences and viewers. So I don't think this is as much about an either or, but it's about taking the best tool for the job and the question that you're trying to answer and making sure that you've got the best, clearest information at your disposal to make a decision and to evolve your marketing approach.
I see. Well, Stephen, I have a question for you, and that is when you have something legacy like Bond and that big of a legacy, what do you do? Do you have to market or is it just, you know, what do you do? And again, there is a younger audience that frankly, everybody knows Bond, James Bond, but maybe they haven't seen all these movies from the 60s. Maybe they are watching them now because they can hunt them down on Netflix or online or wherever. How do you deal with kind of that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I wish we could just sort of put it out, but it is you obviously have an advantage with having IP, right? In anything, it's not just Bond.
Yeah.
You know, having IP as a marketer will tell you is always something good to start with. Just it gets you past with your audience. It gets you past having to explain deeply what it is you're talking about. But you've got to promise a new experience. You've got to promise that especially in a theatrical setting, that I'm going to a theater and it's going to feel new, different, worth it, all those things. So we do a ton of research. The team does a ton of research. We still really enjoy doing the qualitative focus groups, because I think you get, even though they're slightly anecdotal compared to a larger quant set, you get that conversation and you start to hear, okay, this is what someone who is from here and this age and that is just thinking. So that sort of brainwave that you don't get from a thumbs up or a thumb down helps you. But look, similarly to our friends on the creative side, a lot of this marketing has to be gut based, and you sit there and you take all these inputs, and then you make it, and then you sort of make a decision on what the best way to go is. So it can be really scary, but really fun. So nothing these days I think is guaranteed in terms of a sequel or a piece of IP. I mean, Elias, I don't know, you guys probably feel the same way right now with Venom, which is looking great in terms of its sort of pre-tracking and everything. I think the campaign looks fabulous. But I'm sure that there's a ton of time spent on figuring out how to expand.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. I mean, the last movie is such a global hit, and how do you take it to the next level? How do you, get people even more interested in the sequel? Those are the topics we talk a lot about, with Venom coming out.
Yeah, and again, a lot of these films, and it's a wonderful thing, really, that with the theatrical release and then a life on streaming, is that they can develop a whole different audience for some other completely unknown reason once they are available through streaming. It used to be through sort of reruns or the Bond Festival on channel whatever.
Right.
But now it really is something that is there forever. And I imagine there have been surprises. I imagine there have been things that, who would have thought this didn't do that well as a theatrical film, but all of a sudden it's got this huge life, or again, over 10 years, it develops another sort of a life. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You have the flexibility, I assume, with trailers and that sort of thing to change it. Once the film's released, if all of a sudden you find people really love that snow slide scene from a Bond film versus, the martini scene, that you can play it up. You can make that change if you need to, or that's the one that people are buzzing about, whatever it is.
Well, I think there's an art and science to that too, in that you've got to decide sort of how are you going to get the most amount of people as excited as possible before launch, and then how are you going to adjust after launch? To your point, there may be memes or concepts in the movie that from a pre-marketing position would sort of make no sense. But then all of a sudden when the movie launches, it's now sort of an inside joke to 5 to 10 million people, which you can then use to amp the FOMO for all those that didn't go the first weekend. Right. So it's like, if I've got an audience now who knows, I'll use your example, Diane, the snow scene, and they know how amazing it is, and they're posting about it everywhere. The person who didn't go, in their feed or in their just, normal conversations around word of mouth, are going to say, I can't believe I missed this. I can't wait to see it. But before, it may fall flat because it's just out of context and no one knows what it is. So in the streaming world, they deal with that all the time, I believe, in terms of sort of jumping on things that pop.
Yeah. Or using that, on that second round when we were going to see all this again. Yeah.
I wanted to pick up after that conversation, which is, we've also, one of the big key things to do exactly what you guys were talking about is, how to operationalize that approach and how to scale it. Right. So we've relied pretty heavily in the last few years on, and we've invested a lot in our data operation and our data strategy. But we've also taken some big steps to centralize our practice. We built our own marketing analytics team 6 years ago at Sony. We have our own in-house data solutions team and an in-house performance media buying team, which we built about 3 years ago. And before that, we had various teams around the lot doing, lots of different things, not really learning from each other. or it was farmed out to outside agencies to do the work. And since then, the mission has always been to control our own data destiny. We want to make our own employees smarter. We want to manage the process transparently from beginning to end. So if we want to operationalize it and we want to scale it, like I mentioned, those teams are essentially allowing us to do that. So you talked about a trailer launch, and it's a very important part of our campaign practice, right? It's usually the first time a consumer is exposed to our brand.
Right.
It's the opportunity to get new content out into the universe. I completely agree with that. But it's also the opportunity to start testing hypotheses, right? Including audience segments, right? Past purchasers, like I mentioned earlier, followers of similar brands, or video game enthusiasts, or hundreds and hundreds of segments, and the list goes on. And the whole idea from a trailer launch is how do we test the engagement from lots of different hypotheses, audiences, and then how do we learn and refine as we go. So that's a very, very important process that that only happens if you can centralize it, you can operationalize it, you can scale it. Sure. And I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that too, because it's part of what you just discussed.
Elias, I'd love to follow on, because I think it goes to the heart of a lot of the work that we're doing at Known, which is to try and create a really fast and efficient flywheel around the testing and learning, the hypothesis generation, and feeding that back into the marketing strategy across both audience strategy and specific content strategy and creative work. And I think that the trailer is a great example, because as both Stephen and Elias know so well, you're going out not with one trailer, but with multiple versions, and that creates your test and learn set. What we're seeing increasingly is that the most sophisticated marketers, like these guys, will be looking very closely in near real time at which versions are performing well with which micro audience, on which platform, at which time of day, in which sequence. So as we start to tell a story across all of these endpoints through time, where somebody maybe saw the 30-second trailer first, and then which 15-second cut or which 60-second cut do we want them to see next to evolve the way that they're understanding what this is. And then, as Stephen said, start to play with the way that reverberates through social and some of the interactive channels out there, that you can, if you're doing this the right way, and if you're working with the right set of marketing partners, you can have an incredibly agile, high performance process that never stops improving and never stops getting smarter about how to put that right trailer version in front of the right audience at the right time and place to start to get them excited about going to see this film.
Seems like it's all with trailers. It's always on YouTube. I mean, I have yet.
Well, we build versions for every platform.
They're different versions, but you definitely are going to have something on that platform.
For sure. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Yeah.
Because sometimes, you'll see 21 million views on a trailer for a film that's not going to come out, for weeks. But people actually, it's funny, because those who go into theaters, it's always, I'll wait till the trailers are over and then I'll, or I'll go to get my popcorn. But that people are actually looking at them as content that they want to see. Yeah, I think the question that we were addressing was the ability to change. We were talking about YouTube. Right. And the fact that on various platforms, you're going to see different trailers, that people tend to think I've seen the trailer, but you're going to see a bunch of different ones. But I think where I broke everything was we were talking about how the trailers themselves have become popular content.
Well, I think it's really the difference, and Kern and Elias probably use these same terms because these are like marketers' favorite terms, but it's about push versus pull, right? And the pull advertising, like you're saying, Diane, tend to be the trailers, which are your longest form of advertising that tells the clear story, or sometimes teases the most titillating part of the movie. You want the audience on any piece of content that you're putting out as a marketing asset to pull it from you and share it. But there is a large portion of what we do, which is pushing it on people And those are the, sort of the ads that you not can't avoid, but the ads that you're getting on television, that you're getting a 6-second bumper on YouTube, something on TikTok and beyond. The gold standard is the more pull you get from your advertising campaign, the better. Mm-hmm. So if your advertising campaign is out and people are posting it and sharing it every time you toe dip, you're onto something.
Right.
And to Kern's point, like as you get down, and Elias is probably the expert here, but as you get down into the execution of the media campaign, you can basically tweak live the campaign based on what's getting a better pull reaction. Right. And sometimes that pull reaction is likes or engagements or shares or retweets or reposts and beyond.
Yeah, which is something you wouldn't be able to tell how many people went to get popcorn during this,
right.
In a movie theater. But here's something that tells you exactly what people have done.
Yeah, the two highlights I wanted to step on, first of all, the trailers, well, I agree with you. There could be several versions. They're really also optimized for the platform they're on. And if it's a pull strategy or a push strategy, especially for a push strategy, you need to make sure we've taken advantage of every benefit of the platform, right? You mentioned 6-second bumpers. We talk a lot about sound off environments. We talk a lot about vertical environments, since a lot of the content's happening on a device like this. That's a big part of what we do, is to make sure a trailer that historically has been built for an in-theater experience is really optimized for the platform that it's on. That's incredibly important. Stephen also brought up metrics, and we have a big process that we've developed around what we call the metrics that matter. We've even done offsites as a group. You can imagine how exciting a metrics offsite can be, right? But it's really about honing in on, previously there was a lot of different metrics, lots of different things we focused on as a group, not a lot of consistency. And we had to take a major step back and said, what are the most important metrics? What are the metrics most correlated to our desired outcome? The sale of a movie ticket, for example. Yeah. And how do we have a common list of metrics when it comes to campaign metrics, media metrics, audience metrics? And how do we fundamentally shift as a group from a group that focuses on efficiency metrics to now a group that focuses on effectiveness metrics, right? What actually gets butts in seats? Yeah. So that is a big part of what we do, and that's the essence of the metrics that matter, and the practice we do around that.
Yeah, and would that be something like trying to analyze? Okay, if something is shared X number of times, can we compare that to the number of people who actually come see it because of that, or feel like I want to participate in this. I want to be part of it. Yeah,
there's two things. So first of all, the media metrics. I'll get to that point in a second. The media metrics can vary pretty drastically depending on what stage of a campaign you're in. When we're launching a trailer, for example, there's nothing to buy at that point, so we're mostly focused on awareness metrics, right? Brand lift metrics, for example. And then at some point we'll shift gears to be more of a direct response advertiser, and we'll focus on consideration and conversion metrics, maybe cost per metrics, for example, right? Mm-hmm. And the team has built an in-house dashboard to be, like I mentioned before, fully transparent on what we're seeing, regardless of what platform it's on. Now, what you're talking about is, how we've refined our predictive analytics practice. Yeah. And this is another cornerstone for the group. The marketing analytics team has built predictive data-driven models that used to be, available weeks in advance of a film opening. Now it's available months in advance. Mm-hmm. And it's basically to help us determine if a campaign is headed for success or failure. Are we headed for a cliff, or are we headed for the promised land?
Right.
And it's become a single source of truth for us. It's also a campaign optimizer. So for example, if we find out one of the metrics is low in a given week, right? A buzz metric, for example, right? Then as an entire marketing group, we can develop strategies around how to influence that, right? Launch content, get the talent or influencers to launch initiatives. There's lots of things that can be done. Yeah. And then because the tool is homegrown, we built it ourselves, it's fully transparent, we can implement the change, and then a week later we can see how we did.
Yeah.
And so that's a process.
Does it ever lead to just saying, this thing is tanking already and it hasn't even opened? Have there been films that we've never heard of that just disappeared for that reason?
Well, we don't tend to give up on the children.
But does it happen? Does it happen that a film is just, look, this is not gonna fly?
Yeah, there's other pivots you can make. Yeah, we tend to, it depends where we are in the process, but we tend to make some major shifts, make, shifts in the approach and the creative and the strategy well before we give up on
right. It's not typical then to give up. It's more likely, how do we shift this? How do we?
Yeah, or there's investment changes you can make. There's lots of things you can do, but we tend to really try, everything possible to make it successful.
I see. What I think I'd like to do is just kind of give, I think we're kind of running out of time here, but just to give everybody a chance to kind of have a last word, if you will, or something you'd like to leave our viewers with when they're thinking about marketing, or complaining about marketing, or whatever it is people do when they speak of marketing. And let's start with you, Kern. What do you think people should know? I know that, and this seems to be a generational thing. Some people are incredibly suspicious of marketing. Some people just embrace it. They love to be part of the marketing. What would you want people to know in terms of how to use it?
So first, I think I want to come back to your first question of what should people know about what's happening in data that they might not already know. And because I think that this panel and this conversation has gone a long way to expressing the essence of what I think is happening, which is just a new level of sophistication and thought in marketing and in creating agility and dynamism and bringing a learning mindset and a growth mindset to how we're marketing. And I think along with that, to get to the heart of your question, is what you're really seeing is the evolution and the elevation of listening along with expressing, right? We're not marketing out there with a megaphone and earmuffs. We're now going out and learning constantly and looking for that feedback and looking for those signals of engagement and impact and interest. And Stephen said it perfectly, looking for pull, not just push. That's an exciting moment. That represents the evolution of marketing. And I think when you see people who are having a bad or frustrating experience with advertising, it's because it's being done wrong.
Yeah.
Right. But at its essence, that's the old kind of marketing. That's people who've decided to blast out a message without paying a lot of attention to who, right? And getting caught in those biases, getting caught in those assumptions about who this message is for. And they're hitting you over the head with a message that doesn't really resonate for you, doesn't matter, and isn't convincing you of anything. They're not in a conversation. And I think you look at the folks who are doing marketing today, like my colleague Stephen and Elias, they're doing it the right way. They're listening, they're thinking, they're reacting, they're in a conversation, and they're looking for feedback and connection. And I can tell you, in my own life as a consumer and member of the audience, boy, is that a lot more engaging and a lot more pleasant to be around than somebody who's just blasting their opinion out there. So I think what we're seeing in the evolution of data, in the evolution of the state of the art, is really creating a more consumer-centric and audience-centric experience that people are going to get a lot more out of.
Yeah, it's just for them to realize that now you have the means by which to hear what we're saying. So
that's right. The data is really that listening tool as much as anything that just makes our marketing better and smarter.
Oh, okay. Stephen, what do you have to say on the last round here?
My last round. So what I would say, and I don't know if this is exactly relevant, but I think it's a good takeaway in general about marketing, but specifically about entertainment marketing. Why I love it so much and why I love this industry so much is that the entire industry is based on emotion, right? It is based on the creation of a television show, a movie, a documentary is about evoking emotional response. It can be anger, fear, love, sadness, happiness, all in one, a few of those, but that is the we're trying to pull that from the audience. Marketing is the same thing. All of our marketing is trying to get an emotional response from our intended target. Half the battle is just grabbing their attention, but then once you have it, what do you do with it? And I think it's why it can be so gut-wrenching to be a marketer, because sometimes you can't get that response. And then it can be extremely exhilarating because you really have got the the culture and the zeitgeist's attention with something. So that's why I love it.
Yeah, well, great. And how about you, Elias?
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo those two statements. I love that. It's the reason why I love what we do as well every day. Well, I guess I'll go back to the title of the panel and say we will always be an art-driven company, like I mentioned. But the science is incredibly important, undervalued at times, but incredibly important. And really, 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 if done correctly, should give you confidence in the decisions we make, on the art side, on the marketing side as well. So, make sure both are part of the daily discussion. Control your own data destiny, fish where the fish are, all the other, phrases that I gave today. And let's continue to innovate in the space.
Yeah, well, again, it's heartening to those of us listening to sort of think, hey, they are figuring out new ways to find out what I want versus the other way around, ways to sell me what you've got. So all good.
Well said.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. Glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Again. Thank you, Elias, Kern, and Stephen. And thanks to our audience for tuning into The Grill. I see. Well, Stephen, I have a question for you, and that is when you have something legacy like Bond and that big of a legacy, what do you do? Do you have to market or is it just, what do you do? And again, there is a younger audience that frankly, everybody knows Bond, James Bond, but maybe they haven't seen all these movies from the 60s. Maybe they are watching them now because they can hunt them down on Netflix or online or wherever. How do you deal with kind of that?
I mean, I wish we could just sort of put it out, but it is you obviously have an advantage with having IP, right? In anything, it's not just Bond.
Yeah.
Having IP as a marketer will tell you is always something good to start with. Just it gets you past with your audience. It gets you past having to explain deeply what it is you're talking about. But you've got to promise a new experience. You've got to promise that, especially in a theatrical setting, that I'm going to a theater and it's going to feel new, different, worth it, all those things. So we do a ton of research. The team does a ton of research. We still really enjoy doing the qualitative focus groups because I think you get, even though they're slightly anecdotal compared to a larger quant set, you get that conversation and you start to hear, okay, this is what someone who is from here and this age and that is just thinking. So that sort of brainwave that you don't get from a thumbs up or a thumb down helps you. But look, similarly to our friends on the creative side, a lot of this marketing has to be gut based, and you sit there and you take all these inputs, and then you sort of make a decision on what the best way to go is. So it can be really scary, but really fun. So nothing these days I think is guaranteed in terms of a sequel or a piece of IP. I mean, Elias, I don't know, you guys probably feel the same way right now with Venom, which is looking great in terms of its sort of pre-tracking and everything. I think the campaign looks fabulous. But I'm sure that there's a ton of time spent on figuring out how to expand.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. I mean, the last movie is such a global hit, and how do you take it to the next level? How do you, get people even more interested in the sequel? Those are the topics we talk a lot about, with Venom coming out.